And today we're going to be talking about a very special book in a volume of books.
This is one volume of a set of books that's shared with us by Mary Joy Hooker. It's East Texas, its history, and its makers. And it's a 5-volume set, and this is volume 3 that we're talking about today. It has a chapter in it on Panola County. This book was published in 1940. It's really interesting to look back, and this is a set of books that covers the state of Texas, and Panola County has a chapter in it. And I found it real interesting to compare what they knew in 1940 when they published this book with what we know now about the county. A lot of things we could add to it. We could broaden this chapter and fill the book full now. But it was interesting to find the things that they had then. For instance, they did discuss in the beginning of this chapter on Panola County the confusion that was in the early days of this county about Panola County. There were notes that said there was a Panola County in early 1840, and this was not true. It was a judicial district, and it was set up by the state legislature in 1841. Now that was just as the Regulator-Moderator War was in its beginning, and they had needed courts to tighten up, and so it really was a court district, and the court for that district, Panola District they called it, was held at Pulaski. But there was not a Panola County. That was in Harrison County. See, that was part of Harrison County. And so some of our researchers in searching say, are you sure that Panola County was not formed until 1846? And I say, yes, I'm sure. And, well, we found it in 1841, but it's not Panola County. And this old book in 1840, published in 1940, makes that clear, that it was a mistaken decision made that the court, during Texas Republic days, by the way, 1841, you see, was before we were a state even. We were an independent republic. And the legislature of the republic set this up. And then the court of Texas declared it unconstitutional. And so when a county was formed then, 5 years later, this was when Texas became a state in the Union, and counties were formed. And Panola was formed from part of Shelby and part of Harrison. And it actually became a county. And Pulaski had been the court center, little old shacks there, and so that's where the first county seat was. Well, we know all of that now, but it wasn't generally known 50 years ago, and it was confusing when somebody would run upon it. So sometimes it's confusing still. But that's one of the things this old book makes clear. Sometimes it's good to turn the pages of a book from a long time ago. So we're proud of Mary Joy's gift to the library. And that shelf is very important. Another book is on that library that I didn't bring along because these books are heavy to handle. And this is the one that Judge Boren is in. It's a book on Texas and Texans. And it was edited by Dr. Barker, of course, who has his name on the famous library in Austin. But it was published way before this one. It has a 1914 date on it, and it includes a lot of the men in this district. Now, we have only one volume of that set of 5. We wish, if anyone finds one in an attic or something, that they would bring it and add it to that, because it has people from this county in it. And the volume we have, it just has some of the people. The other volumes have some also. But Judge Boren's grandson, whose inscription is in that book, and he's written by Judge Boren to his grandson, and the grandson brought us the book. And it has several of the businessmen in Carthage biographical stories of their work and their lives. And that's one of 5 volumes. If we could get the other volumes, we'd have most of the businessmen in the first part of this century. And so if anybody finds any volumes of that, we would certainly like to have them in the library, in the genealogical library, because that's the kind of stuff that we need to verify that so-and-so was here, had a business here at such and such a time. Well, it's good for us to look back in these books, and we do treasure them very much when they come to us. This confusion about the county seat, though, at Pulaski, is clear to us now. And after 2 years on the riverbanks in Pulaski, of course, we know that Carthage was established. And this was done when Texas became a state. Texas was a republic, and this is another thing. See, we were independent for 10 years, from 1836 to 1846. We were an independent nation, and by the way, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it, but when one of the tours that I had of England, I went to the what do you call it, when a foreign nation has a place where the ambassador is?
Okay, you got me twisted
well,
now.
I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway,
It's the house the ambassador lives
yes,
in.
it is, the Ambassador Center. That little old place is still there. And it has, and I took a slide of it, so I know it's there. And it has the Texas flag on it and everything. We had an ambassador in London in our Republic days. And I really had not thought about that.
Embassy.
Embassy, yes. A Texas, thank you, thank you. Old heads are forgetting words, I'm sorry to say. Yes, we had an official embassy in London in that. I hadn't ever thought about how independent we were. We're still pretty independent, aren't we? Anyway, when we gave up our independence and became a part of the nation, that changed our status there. But that embassy is still branded as the Texas Embassy during the Republic days. And we were privileged to see it, and just a little hole in the wall kind of thing, but it has Texas symbols all around it yet. Now, we know, and we've mentioned before, that the first Chief Justice, which we now call County Judge, was John Allison, and he first settled over there in the Horton community. And he was the one that really gave the final a naming to the county, because he had come from Panola County, Mississippi. And this was, of course, a name meaning cotton, and in Indian language. And so he was a popular man and became judge. But he wanted to keep that county seat on that river. And so they had an election. The state required it. And it was supposed to be nearer the center of the county. And that's when the county seat was moved away from that. And he was replaced in the election by another county judge, or as Chief Justice. In the meantime, he and his family, you see, moved to Fairplay. And clear across the county in that day. But they purchased that land, and they really settled that area and had gins and mills and stores and everything. And so the Allison descendants are out that way still, out Highway 79 toward Henderson. Well, this county was made up of part of Harrison and part of Shelby, and that's the way we came to be. But in this book, there are all kinds of mentions, and one of the things that I fell upon that they were wrong on was the early courthouses. He goes on to tell in here that the first courthouse was built at a certain time on the square, and it was a frame building, and right afterwards a brick building. That's not true. Their first was a log one. And I have studied the minutes of the court. And they even, when they just used the log building, the log courthouse, right on that square where Anderson Park is now. That it cost them $200 to build it. That meant cut the trees, skin the logs, and put that up. And the contractors wanted $250, but they had to pay for that by selling lots around the square. Well, it's in the middle of a forest. They couldn't get much for those lots, so it was hard to pay for it. So they said $250 more than they could afford to build a courthouse. And so they offered them $200, and they took it and built it. And that first one was a log building. But they did not use it but about, well, they started a brick one in a couple of years. It took them a year to get it. So, and we have in our history book Margaret Tillery's interpretation of the log building. There's no picture of it anywhere, but from descriptions we could.
She's drawn.
She has drawn us one, and that's in the history. But then we have pictures then of the first brick one, and there was not a frame one as such. It was the log one was followed by a brick one. Of course, it was not the thick brick that the old courthouse that we know was, because that old courthouse was the third one that was on the square. But in the house we have now, actually there was a log house at Pulaski, which was the first courthouse. Then there was a log house in Carthage, which was the first one in Carthage. Then there was the first brick courthouse on the square, and then it was replaced by the old Gothic castle that we know about. Mm-hmm. And that was replaced by the present one. So what does that make? 5 in all that we've had. And, of course, everybody still says, if you just hadn't torn down the old courthouse. We had visitors just no longer ago than yesterday said, "Isn't it a shame that you tore down the courthouse?" I said, forget it. We didn't tear it down. It was just part of progress. And we don't weep over that anymore. We just try to save what we have. And we think we're making some progress doing that. Well, things happened in this county as the population increased. Railroads came. And I was interested that these people played up the change in Beckville when the railroads came. See, Beckville got the railroad ahead of Carthage. It came through Beckville. And actually, when it finally got to Carthage, Carthage had a big celebration on the square and invited all of Beckville to come as a guest. And this was before we were antagonists in school activities, I guess. But anyway, I have found evidence that they just had just straight benches in the box cars to bring the crowd. And they came in and had the party and then went back, you know, on the train as a celebration of getting the railroad all the way from Longview to Carthage.
See, I can still remember on the railroad with the little stub-nose one-car train that used to come through.
Right, it was a passenger train.
From Longview to Beaumont?
Yes, I guess it did go to Beaumont. I guess it did. But this is the first time it came through, and they made a big celebration of it. But Beckville had been the receiver of it ahead of Carthage, and that was really something to celebrate. And Carthage.
And they came in boxcars with benches for seats.
Yes, and poured out on the streets then, and Carthage people had, spread food and dancing on the streets, and they had a big celebration. And this was before, of course, long before there were any paved streets. So imagine dancing in that dust.
You could certainly kick your heels, couldn't you?
You bet you could, you bet. But he also goes in this book into discussion of the moving of the town of Beckville. See, the railroad moved the town. The town was, he said, a mile. I think it was about 1.5 miles from where it is now. It was on the old Grand Bluff Road, and that cuts across this side of Beckville. And when I was a child, my father used to, of course, we didn't use that road, but we could see the houses on it as we went along in the buggy along the present road, about where the present road is. And he would point out there were two-story houses over there where there'd been stores and things. And it was inside, and it was always a mystery to me then. I didn't understand the history of it. And that was the old Grand Bluff Road from Grand Bluff to Nacogdoches. And it went through just west of Fairplay, through the Reed Settlement, and joined Old Trammell Trace as they went on down toward Nacogdoches. Well, Beckville, Old Beckville, was there on what's called Wall Branch. We talked about Dr. Wall. Well, one of the doctors, Wall, had his offices there, and this branch was named for that family, and that's where the village was. And this little roadway still, you could go down in there to that branch area. I don't know whether you can go all the way through or not, but you can go part of the way down it because I've been down it. But I've gotten where I'm a little leery of going down roads since they've moved them all and changed them with the coal mining, you know.
Right.
I don't know where I'm going to come out, so I don't do as much exploring as I used to. But anyway, the owners of the land were not as agreeable as the railroad company thought they ought to be. And this Mr. Biggs then owned the land where Beckville is now. And he was most generous with a donation of land.
Kin to the present Biggs family.
Kin to them, yes. Kin, not, not the direct ancestor, I think, but maybe a brother to him or something. I don't know exactly how that, but they are all kin. And he donated a lot of land. And so the railroad just built away from Beckville, and it had to move. Those businesses began to move over on the railroad. And, of course, in the early days of the railroad, that was the transportation. Cotton was king, and they could send it by rail, you see. So that made a difference in the location of the town. The railroad also made a difference in the location of Long Branch and Gary. These were railroad towns, you see, from the other direction. And the railroad had its day. And it's kind of sad to think that now it's gone.
It really is, because much activity surrounded the depot and the loading and unloading of cars.
Right here in Carthage, it was the show place. The first concrete that was laid in this town was laid on the sidewalk from the square to the depot. And it was poured by the Carthage Book Club.
Is that right?
And there is a square on the walk right at the corner of the main square that gives the story of it. All of the leaders of the book club that had to do with making that, because everybody went to the depot and they had to walk, you know. And it was dusty. And the book club, there were no paved streets, no paved walks. This was 1914. First paved sidewalk was so people could walk to the depot. They walked down in crowds to see the train come in. And this was the, you know.
And as you say, I remember, and there's still one of the beautiful old homes is still sitting down, but there were several large homes around.
Street, yes. All that street.
And the one that they moved, I think they moved it to Henderson or Tyler or somewhere.
Yes, Dr. Matthews bought that one. And he talked to me, he called me by long distance to tell me about where he was putting it on a 10-acre hillside. And he says, I hope you'll come see it someday. And it's at Tyler, in the Tyler area. And we've lost them one by one. So that's the reason we're proud to see anyone saved.
Well, we're fortunate we still have North St. Mary.
Yes, yes. And it's easy for the old ones to go. But when they do, we lose some flavor of our heritage.
Well, I got you off the subject. I didn't mean to do that.
That is all right.
I wasn't paying
We're running out of
attention to time.
Also.
But
Well,
we can continue on with this.
You bet. There are always a lot of other things. Somebody asked me about the second year I was doing a little writing on this heritage. I guess you've about run out of stuff, haven't you? I says, you don't live that long. There's bushels of it if you just have time to dig it. And, of course, I'm corresponding all the time with the East Texas Genealogical Society, and they're publishing things of our county. We can show you our shelf now in comparison to what it was when we started. We had one little book done by the Carthage Book Club in 1936, just a little thin book. Now we have a long shelf of Panola County, just Panola County. And we pat ourselves on the head for having brought that about.
You bet.
Because we've worked hard at it to get it done.
Are you still taking names that
We
would
are
be interested in a reprint of the first
Yes.
book of
Yes,
history?
we are taking names, and we don't have near enough yet. We'll have to have 100 names before we can have a reprint. So if anyone is interested in getting a reprint, it will cost about double what they did before, because that's the way printing costs have gone up. But we can get it done if enough people want it done.
Good. You and I both need to go out to the Shrine Circus this afternoon or tonight.
Indeed. Oh, I love a circus.
The report came from Palestine, where the show was last evening, that they had standing room only, and it was an outstanding show. So
I'm sure it is.
we're all looking forward to that.
I've been to these shrine circuses before, and they're tremendous.
You know, if you normally you get to go to one, you can go to Dallas or Houston
Yes.
or maybe
I've
Longview.
always been in the big cities that you have
So
to
we're
go.
we're so fortunate for the first
I
time.
don't know how you pulled it. Now, I just don't see
Well,
how you fellows got it here.
We've got a good active group, and
Yes.
I think it's kind of a reward for some hard work that they've
I'm
brought
sure
it in
that's
here.
right. I'm sure that's right.
So reminding everyone, your children, your grandchildren, the neighbors' children.
It's a family
Oh,
thing.
you bet.
Yes.
As they say, for the young or the young at heart.
Yeah, right, right.
Thank you for this 127th show that you helped us with, and we look forward to the 128th.
Okay, since they said at the City Commission that I would be there to renew a 99-year contract 99 years from now, I'll stay around a while.
Very good. Thank you kindly, and reminding everyone, don't forget the meeting at the Historical Genealogical Association Library, and that will be Labor Day, Monday evening at 7 p.m., and need everyone there.
That's right.
Until this time tomorrow, when we'll have the High Sheriff of Panola County, I hope that you have a good day. Go to the circus. It'll be fun. Don?
Oh, man.
In the Thursday edition of Panola Pride, our guest today, as each Thursday, is Mrs. LeGrone, and we'll jump right into our program. If we might, we have some announcements to make. The official date, the day that we've all been waiting for, has been set.
Yes. We've been a little shaky about it because we were trying to get the governor and we were trying to schedule around her schedule, and we just failed totally. Her whole October is taken with government business, and she cannot come to East Texas. So we're on the trail of another very great and interesting speaker, and we'll be able, I think, by this time next week to announce the speaker, but we can definitely announce the date is back to our original date, the 26th.
Of October.
October 26th, a Saturday at 10 o'clock Saturday morning.
So everyone mark your calendar.
It's going to be a great day, and we're working toward getting the museum ready to set up also.
Okay, we have another announcement that we'd like to make of a program coming up on Falcon Cable Channel 12.
Right.
This Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock will be the presentation, and I'll let you tell about the presentation.
Oh, the presentation of our real treasure, the model airplane that James Brewster named via Panola Express, the B-17, that had 59 missions, bombing missions in Europe. They have, of course, the boys that built the model did it from inspiration that James had given them. Now they have donated all of that labor, thanks to Andy Snow and his friend Guy. They have donated all of that to the museum, and their presentation gave the story of it. And this is what you filmed for us. And anyone who is interested in Panola County heritage, will certainly be interested. This really honors all servicemen of World War
It
II.
really does. It really does. Excellent program, and it will air on Sunday, this coming Sunday at 2 p.m. It'll be on the cable only, and it'll be on the local, our local cable channel 12. So if you'd like to see that, tune in. It's an excellent program, and Mr. Snow did a super job with it. He just really
They
did.
have done such thorough research on it, and he just stood up and talked just like a master at it.
Well, if I wanted to mail you a letter, I'd have to go to the post office.
Right,
And
right.
we've had a few places to mail letters, and probably some varied places that post offices have been located in the history of Panola County.
Yes, and this indicates where people settled. I divided this, and when I got into it again, I have Mr. Wright Patman had done, his staff did the story of the post offices of all of his district, and we have all of them. But we're going to talk about, that is, all the counties around us, plus Panola County. We're just going to talk about Panola County, the first 2 decades. There are a lot of other little post offices that were established. Understand that in the beginning, those post offices were set up in somebody's store or somebody's house. There were no post office buildings as such. It was a little corner in something when they first were set up. And the amazing thing is that in the first 10 years, in the 1840s, for instance, and that's the way I went through them, I have in the first 10 years, I have, I believe, let's see, 10 post offices, and only one of them is still in existence. And they were all on the east side of the county, except Carthage. And Carthage had been established right at the end of the 40s, in 1849, because Carthage was blazed out of the woods in 48. And the next year they got a post office in Carthage, and of course it still is our main post office. But of all of these, I thought we might talk about the ones that were along the Harrison County border and along the Louisiana border. And I had a big map, and I marked it. I'm a big hand for maps to show, and I marked all that on it and put these places in. But it's a little booky for me to bring down, and so we'll have to imagine that we can see the map of Panola County. But for instance, Bethany, we know where Bethany is. Bethany was established as a post office in Texas, see, on the Texas side, in 1849. And it remained in Texas as a Texas post office until 1860, just before the Civil War. And then the post office was set up across the line. You know, the stores in Bethany were right on the line. And the legends go that men that were gambling or drunkards or whatever, would just cross over to the other side of the store to get away from being arrested because it was on the line. And if a Texas officer came after them while they stepped over inside the store to the other side of the store to Louisiana, or if a Louisiana law came after them, they stepped back over in Texas. Well, it was that, you know, just a little village then, but it was a stopping place for travelers that going back and forth to Shreveport. But it was a Texas post office until 1860. Well, then that same year, 1849, Carthage was established. And I think it might be interesting to know who those first postmasters were.
Sure.
Thomas G. Davenport was the one at Bethany, and later he was a county judge here. Then Carthage first postmaster was William L. Powers. Now, I'm sure he was not related to Ernest Powers, whom we have known, of course, in modern times, because Ernest Powers was not a native here. But he was the first postmaster in Carthage, and that began in 1849, and it is still in existence, and the only one of the first decade that is still in existence. Then right on the the Harrison County line. We're talking about the east side of the county. There were no settlers much on the west side of the county. The Martin settlement grew on the northeast corner, and Reed settlement grew on the southeast corner. And finally, Reed settlement got one, but not at first. And there was a little post office called Mount Morn, and there was one called Perry's. Both of those were one way up the river, was right at a crossing on the river. So many of them were right at crossings on the river. Perry's was right at the edge of the county, and it was named Perry's because Perry was the first postmaster. And then later it became Davis, the same post office. Became Davis because it moved to Davis's house. And this was right in the northwest corner of Panola County, right on the county line to Harrison. Of course, it was in Harrison at first, but that part of Harrison became Panola County, so it was on the county line. And the other one established there, right on the opposite corner, nearer to the Shreveport Road, was the Mount Morn one, and it was established earlier than Perry. It was established in 1847 and was in Harrison County at first, and then became Kinloch or Kimloch in Panola County. Now those are not in existence. Mr. Dillard, T.J. Dillard, was the first postmaster there, and neither of them is in existence now. Kinloch was just from 49 to 53, 4 years. See, it operated a little community, and they got them, but when settlements grew down the way, why, it was put in with somebody else's post office down in the next community. And they had horseback riders take the mail from one to another, you know, and you went to the post office to get your mail when these little post offices were in the communities. The mail was carried to the post office, and you rode horseback or walked or something to that post office 2 or 3 miles away to get your mail. Well, then Grand Bluff. Grand Bluff, of course, was a busy community, and Charles F. Lewis was the first postmaster there, and it was established in 1847. This is before Carthage. See, these were villages on the east side of the county, on the river where people were coming in, and they settled and built communities at the crossings on the river. And Grand Bluff had its post office longer because it was a busy crossing on the river until the trains came and bridged the rivers and so on. Why, this was a busy crossing. And it lasted from 1847 to 1887. So it made it through the Civil War, you see. So many of these, and it's very interesting to see, so many folded at the end of the Civil War. They had been active up till then, and when we went into the Reconstruction period with the officers of the Yankee officers in charge, military is what I'm trying to say. We were under military rule for 10 years after the war, just about, and they just closed them coming and going because they were local communities, and they didn't want any chatter in the communities. They wanted them all to come to the center, and they didn't come, but, you know, they wanted them to. Roads got bad and all this sort of thing. So the Reconstruction period finished the destruction of little community post offices, but as years passed, they grew again in the various communities, like a sawmill would establish, and a sawmill would have a whole bunch of houses for the workers, and so they'd establish a little post office. As long as that mill worked there, the post office, I remember in the research on my father's family, the Stones, Ed Stone was a sawmill man, and wherever his sawmill was established, there was a Stone's Mill post office. And then when they saw all the timber in that area and move, well, that post office was closed. Well, this is the way the early post offices went. There was a Jones, and I have not yet found out exactly where the Jones was. Most of these I can put my finger on where they were, but the Jones one I cannot. Mr. Wright Patman's researchers did not find where Jones post office was. It was in somebody's house, but where that house was, I don't know. And it just lasted 3 or 4 years and was closed. But then there was Macmillan's. And you know, there are Macmillan's over on the east side, still on the east side of the county. Nearly all of the settlers, except the ones that settled at Reed Settlement and at Martin Settlement, were on the east side of the county at the beginning. Then when Carthage was established and when roads were blazed through, see, there were no roads right through the county. And this is another thing. I'm going to bring that map sometime and show where I've drawn the roads, the early roads. And you see that there was no passage through the middle of the county. Those early roads went in a triangle, north and east and west. Trammell Trace was there, but it didn't go through the center of the county. It went on the edge of the county, you see. Well, Macmillan family settled over there and had a post office. And they had a little store and had a post office there. Then, of course, is Pulaski. Pulaski was our first county seat, and it was one of the first post offices. January the 15th, 1847 is when it was established. But it's one of the death knell from the Civil War. In 1867, it was closed. And Grand Bluff was a large enough community and a busy enough crossing that it lasted a number of years later. Then Reed Settlement did get one after Carthage was established. They got a post office, and this post office lasted 20 years at Reed Settlement before there was a Clayton. You see, Reed Settlement was a couple of miles the other side of Clayton, over there on the Grand Bluff Road. And they had a post office, and of course, Mr. Reed's grave is over there, right near where he settled. And then finally there's a Walnut Hill, and this is the one that I have found that Mr. Wright Patman's researchers in Washington made a mistake on. Now, I don't claim to be smart enough to challenge everybody that does research, but I know where Walnut Hill is, and it is an old community, and it's over past Deadwood, and he has it over by Long Branch. And this Walnut Hill was a busy community, and the cemetery is there yet and shows this. Several Civil War veterans have markers there, and it's an interesting place, and I have walked it out, so I know they did make a mistake on where he said it was. But the post office was established again in 1849, the same time Carthage was, and it lasted until 1880. So you see, it went through the early settlement days. But of these 10 post offices, all of them, except, I don't know about Jones, but all of them except Jones and Carthage were on the east side of the county, every one of them, either on the river or the other side of the river. You see, coming in, they found land sort of like they had come from, and they settled down, and that's where the communities grew. And they'd come. Then, moving into the next decade, Carthage was established in 1848. So Carthage Post Office is the oldest one, the only one of that era that's still in existence. But going into the 1850s, we had a dozen more established, and only 2 of those still exist. And there was Anacostia, who had Mr. Crawford as the Samuel W. Crawford. And I think this one was on the west side of the county, over close to the Henderson Road, and on that side. And then Beckville was established in 1857. And of course, Beckville was first established in Old Beckville. And then when the trains came, the railroad, Old Beckville moved to New Beckville. But the post office continued as Beckville Post Office, you see. And it's still in existence after 57. Then there was Fairplay, Mr. Allison moved from Horton over there on the east side of the county. At first, he was over there on the river, past the river, and he bought the Williams land out here just past Fairplay, and moved his family and delegation of Allisons out there, and it was just an Allison village, is what it was. But Allison himself was not the postmaster. There were Allisons later that were postmasters. And the Fairplay post office lasted from 1851 to 1904. And I understand, and it was a Mr. Gill, Joshua Gill, that was the first postmaster. But I understand that the whole village was run mainly by the Allison family. They had a gin, they had a store, they had all kinds of things going on, and of course a big plantation and all of that. I have not found out where Fort Point is. If anybody knows where Fort Point is, I'd like to know, because it had a post office starting in 1859. It lasted until the end of the Civil War. It was one of the losses of the Civil War again when the military came in. They closed it. But William J. Vickery was the first postmaster. Then Golden Vale was established in 1856, and it just lasted 2 years, so it was just in somebody's house, you see. And Lineville, now this is over near the northeast corner of the county, and Louis Midiot was the postmaster. And this one lasted from 59 to 88, 1888 that is. And Long Branch is the other one that's still existing, and it was established in 1858. And Edward Nix was the first postmaster, and it's still there in 91. And they're able to keep it there in spite.
Front Porter's going to make sure it stays there,
Yes, sir, it's there. And then there was one called Murray. Now, I was fooled by this one. Haston Toomey was a great Mason. He was big in the Masonic order, and he lived in the south side corner of the county. And the Murrays that I've found in records were over on the west corner, over toward Fairplay. Mm-hmm. But evidently this Murray post office was not over there. It had to be in Haston Toomey's area, which is where the Toomeys down Old Center area still live. An interesting one I thought was Sharon. My mother used to talk about Sharon because it was next to Rusk County, and it is Pine Hill, actually, is what it is. But Pine Hill is in Rusk County, and Sharon was Panola County. And this post office was right on the line, you see, between Rusk and Panola. And my mother grew up near that. She grew up at Chapman Community in Rusk County. And she was always talking about Sharon, Old Sharon. Well, it's just a country community, of course, and they had the post office. And in 1856, they established it there, and the postmaster was Theodore Beck. Now, I don't know what kin he was to the Mr. Beck that established Beckville, but it must have been some kin because that's not that common a name. Mm-hmm. And this post office didn't last but 1 year in Panola County. It went back to Rusk County, to Pine Hill. All right. And it so happened that my mother's brother was a career postman at Pine Hill. Hmm. He lived out his life and retired in Pine Hill as postmaster. So how are we going on
Just
time?
2 minutes.
Okay, Sugar Hill I have to mention. Sugar Hill is a fine old cemetery and was a fine community. And it had a post office from 1850 to 1904. And Terrell Henson, who figured much in the early records of this county. He was commissioner, he was everything at one time or another from that section. He was the first postmaster, and that post office moved around the Sugar Hills and the Sand Hills, right where the mining has gone on. Mm-hmm. And it was first in one house, depending on who the postmaster was. But old Dr. Mitchell what was his name? Williams, Mitchell Williams, had it at his place for a long time in the Sandhills. And in my memory, I heard them talk about Sugar Hill Post Office, but it came to Brooks Community where I went to school. And it was not in Sugar Hill, but it was still called Sugar Hill. It was then in James Gentry's house. And James Gentry is Sue Smith up here, grandfather, or great-grandfather. A connection in the family,
There
anyway.
you go.
And he was the last of those postmasters, and then it became a rural route. And the boxes were all over the place right at Brooks School. And so I remember seeing the boxes and hearing that it once was a post office, was once Sugar Hill Post Office. So that's interesting to me. Then there was Sweeton, and finally Woods. Now, as a final on all these, we'll make a quick rundown. We have now 6 post offices out of all of those, and there have been a lot of others we didn't have time to mention. But there are 6 that exist now. Carthage is the oldest one, 142 years old. Beckville is next, 134 years old. Long Branch is next, 133 years old. Clayton is next, 117 years old. DeBerry is that same year. Well, actually, 3 days before. They were both established in June of 1874, 117 years ago. And Gary, 108 years ago. Now then, these 6 are in existence today. It would be a good trivia question. Who are the 6 postmasters today in this
Outstanding
county?
question. And that we'll put a teaser out there because we have something coming up on KGAS that you'll enjoy playing, I think, in just a few days.
Okay, this would be a challenge to name the 6 postmasters in this county now. And people that were postmasters lived in the area. So if you're tracking your relatives and find the name, there they are. There they were.
Excellent program today. Thank you. Our time is gone. A couple of things to remember the date. Mark your calendar, the 26th of October, and Thursday edition of Finola Pride. Mrs. LeGrone, our guest today, as she is each and every Thursday, and we have a very interesting program today. But first, we have a little housekeeping to take care of. Announcement, you need to have a call meeting of the board of directors of the the Historical and Genealogical Association board. And that needs to be taken when? Saturday the 14th? Is that
yes,
when you
this coming Saturday at 6:30 in the evening.
All right, it'll be in the old jail.
Yes.
Okay.
We have some important planning to do.
I just need to brag a little bit. I watched the program last Sunday of the Finola Express.
I thought it was very good.
And I was extremely, once again, impressed over the young men that worked on that project and how well they did.
They just have done a wonderful job, and this will be, as I said before, highlight of our military display. But we thank you for
that's
doing the tape.
My pleasure to do it because I got the chance to hear the program.
It was good. I mean, the reception was good in the community, so it will be a treasure.
That's a piece of history that we needed everyone to have a chance to review.
That's right.
Well, speaking of part of history of Finola County, I think you just received a gift to the library that's challenged you again.
Right. This book has been presented to us by Grady and Johnny Kyle. It is the Kyle story as nearly as they have been able to get it together. They didn't write the book, but he made it available to us. It was written by Dorothy Hardwick and Bill Kyle. They were the 2 that got the information together. And it goes way on back, but I thought we'd talk about the part that deals with Finola County, when they came and settled over there on McFadden Creek in Old Center area. And just about everybody over there and everybody on that side of the county is descended from the Kyle original settlers. And there were 2 brothers that came there from a big family, and others came too, girls, and their husbands came too, but I thought we'd limit our remarks because we can't cover everything. To those 2 brothers, one, Robert E. Kyle, came and settled. And then his brother, Dr. James Stanhope Kyle, came a little bit later and settled by his brother, and their properties joined on McFadden Creek. And we've had some mention before of McFadden neighborhood dealing with them, but these settlers were there before the Regulator-Moderator War. They got there, actually, the first brother, Robert Edmondson, got there in 1839, and the Regulator War really didn't start until 41. So they were in the middle of it, you see, and McFadden neighborhood was burned and all that sort of thing, you know, so that was their neighbors. Dr. Kyle came and joined his brother, Edmund, Robert E., and they obtained a big spread of land along McFadden Creek there. And Dr. Kyle and his wife had no children. They reared one of her nephews, I believe. But Robert Kyle reared a big family. He and his family made up a big family. I think he had 7 sons and 3 daughters, maybe. I think this is what I found. And it was from this family that most of the Kyles that are over there now came. And this book that they have presented us is a good resource for everybody that's descended, and that's nearly everybody in the south part of the county that's descended from them. Now then, this is the Old Center neighborhood, right near Old Center Church. This Dr. James Kyle, James S. Kyle, came there and brought a young bride, and they settled and built a log house that stood there until not too long ago. It was considered the oldest, sturdiest old log house in the county, but I believe it has been moved now. But it was a huge logs, and this book even has pictures of it. I don't know that I can find them, but they're in here, pictures of how the logs went together and what a sturdy house it was. And probably before we're through, we'll run. Here we are. See how those huge logs
had them hewed and notched, didn't they? Certainly did.
And put together with wooden pegs. And then a picture of the house is here. This is in recent, fairly recent years that this is the old house that still stood. So
that's amazing that they talk about how strong and how efficient that house was built, and we look at it, it looks just like a very modest little cabin.
Right, it sure does. But it was a good, strong house with fireplace for heat, of course, and this was the home of Dr. Kyle, and he immediately started his medicine practice all over this area, into Louisiana, and as far as Shreveport, by horseback. See, they went on personal calls to the families, so country doctors, and he made a fortune at it. I mean, in a few years, he didn't live all that long. Now, he, as I said, created a home, he and his wife, for one of her nephews, and then I think they probably reared some other, or helped some other young people. And he meant to help educate his brother Robert's children, but he didn't live to do it. He died. But his brother was the administrator of his estate when he died, and it was a good size estate. And from those 7 sons and 3 daughters, I believe I remember, have come big families. And from them we have the Kyles that we know today. Not only the Kyles, but a lot of other names fit into this. And between these 2 brothers, they had, as I said, a great mass of land there. Now, Robert had the large family, and Dr. James had none. But actually, the land and fortune was together. I mean, They all profited, and some of the descendants have held on to some of that land still that was in that family. There are legends about the Kyles that I think are kind of interesting. Dr. Kyle and his bride moved from Mississippi to Texas by a wagon train, by just a wagon. And on the way, one horse died, and they finally came on in with a one-horse wagon and $500 in money. And $500 in cash money was pretty good, you know, in 1841. And immediately they built the house, and he started his practice to recapture what he needed for carrying on his medical practice. And there were other legends concerning them. The Kyle brother, now this is Robert E., that reared the large family. He had married twice, and his second wife died when the sister that was living at home was 15. She was the chief cook for the large family of father and sons, and they farmed, worked hard in the field. And one day, so the story goes, one day when they were in the field at work, she was cooking lunch, dinner, they called it, and the house caught fire. And they were off in the field, but they saw the smoke. They were hoeing, and I don't know whether it was hoeing cotton or corn. Everybody hoed everything, hoed the grass out, you know. And so they came running, and it was a story and a half is the way Hazel Kyle described it in her story of the family. It was a story and a half high, but it was on fire all over when the men got there. And the father, now this is the father of Fred and Kit and all of these that are the fathers of Grady. And see, this is his grandfather now that had this house. And he just hit the house running upstairs, and the sons tried to, some of them groaned about it, but then they tried to keep him from going upstairs, and he paid no attention at all. And they saw him coming back dragging his trunk. And they did not know that his trunk was his bank. And there were no banks then. See, this was before the day of banks in this area. And he dragged that trunk down the stairs and out in the yard, and that was his salvation for building a new home. Had enough money in that trunk to risk his life to get it, but went right to work building a new home because he had the cash to do it. This is an interesting story, and these homes were right on McFadden Creek over there in the southern part next to Shelby County. And the two families did what all the early families did. When they died, they were buried right there at home, and it became a family cemetery. So there were two little family cemeteries, one on each farm. One was Dr. Kyle's family cemetery, and the other was his brother, Kyle. So those are lost now, except maybe a stone or two, but they know the locations where they were. And this is true all over this county. They're back in the woods somewhere. And this was really wild wilderness territory when they came in there. And they cleared land and went to work on it. And this father of all these sons was a hard worker, and he taught his sons to work. Took them to the field and taught them, so they soon came up financially and did well. Now then, what about the Kyle descendants? I thought this is what many people would be interested in, because the Kyle descendants are everywhere, and they need to know that we have this book that gives so much of their early story. And if they want to do the research, why, we welcome them to the library on the days that we're open. From Robert Kyle, who lived from 1805 to 1875, becomes the large family. And Robert Edmondson. And he was appointed when Dr. Kyle died. Now, you see, Robert lived till 1875, after the Civil War. Dr. Kyle died in the 1850s, before the Civil War. And his brother was his administrator. Now, Dorothy Hardwick explains here in this book that Dr. Kyle's wife contested her brother-in-law's being the administrator, but and she wanted to be in charge of it herself. It was a pretty large estate, though, and the court paid her no attention at all. Women weren't supposed to be able to manage large estates, so Robert Kyle went ahead and took care of the estate. It was extended in the probate over 3 or 4 years before it was finally settled. But it was about a $50,000 estate in the 1850s. And so he had climbed to that. You know, doctors in that day took whatever people had, and they had land. So that's one way he accumulated so much land. He'd take whatever people had to pay the medical fee, and his land grew, and his stock grew. You know, I mean, they'd trade cattle, or they'd trade whatever they had to pay doctors' bills. And so doctors accumulated a fortune pretty early. And by the time he died, he came here in 1841, and I believe he died in 1857 or 6 or something. That's a relatively short time to raise a fortune.
It really is.
In pioneer times. But he did it, and the family, as I said, are buried at the home place. Now, Robert E. Kyle's family, I thought we'd name some of those children, because they're the ones that we know today, the sons and daughters of Robert E. Kyle. He married, by the way, Elizabeth Hooker. No, his son married Elizabeth Hooker. Robert E. Kyle's son, James Stanhope, he was named for his uncle, who was the doctor. And he married first Elizabeth Hooker, and they had 2 daughters, and she died, and he married a second time. And the second time was Sophronia Miller. Now, he had a large family, as I said, 7 boys and 2 daughters is what this record said. And I thought those boys' names are so familiar to most people that it would be interesting to read the list. There was Jeff Kyle, Alvin Kyle, Jim Kyle, a long-time commissioner in this county, Kit Kyle, now that's Grady's father, father, and June Kyle, and Fred Kyle, that's Miss Hazel's husband, you see, and Bernard Kyle was Miss Estelle's husband. So you see, that's the 7 boys. Now then, not all of them reared big families, but some of them did. And then the daughters were connected with other families through marriage. And so life with that family included the fire upstairs, and I've told you that, and this was the family that, you know, that built the new house with cash out of the trunk. So they were thrifty people, hard-working people, and accumulated good livings. And I understand from going through these notes here that he was able to give each of his children a plot of land when he reached maturity. I listed some family connections that I thought would surprise some people, and this is just a sampling of what's in this book, but these families are all connected, the Woolses, and that takes in J.B. Williams' family, John Ben Williams and all that delegation. come from the Woolses. All right, the Woolses are intermarried with them. Then that gets Williamses. The Meeks. One of the girls married a Meek, and several Meek graves in Old Center Cemetery. The Hilliards, and they figured in have a pretty interesting story about how the Hilliards played a part in the regulated moderated war. Then the Finkleys. They were intermarried with the Finkleys. There's still Finkleys over there at Old Center. The Lacys, connected with the Lacys here in town, and of course Lacys have lived. This same Lacey bunch is across the river as well, on the east side of the county. So you see, they spread pretty well. The connection spreads all over. Then Hardwick, and Dorothy Hardwick is the one that did most of the research, besides Jim Kyle did too. And then Randall, one of the heroes of the Civil War. He was one of the sons of one of the daughters, and he's buried at that famous Marshall Cemetery where so many are, Horace Randall, and he became a general in the Civil War. The Barons are intermarried, the Conways, the Stillwells, I've mentioned the Meeks, the Rowes. Mr. Rowe was the foundation of the Old Center community, just about it, and he was there in the Texas Revolution. And so one of the Rowe daughters married a Kyle, and the list goes on and on. A family like this has helped to establish this county, and their descendants are everywhere. And I challenge the people that are descendants to come find out about themselves. Come find out there are a lot of stories in here, but mainly this is pointing up the relations from generation to generation, which is what you have to have if you're searching the generations of your family. So we're real proud of this, another treasure in our library. And we have so many family stories now. It's just a joy to walk in and say, all of these are family stories. Look for your family name and you have it made. You can just add to it and you have it made.
Outstanding. It's neat. Enjoyable, as you say.
Yes, it's
just
enjoyable
amazing.
to see. Now, I fit in here and go from there. And you can get all your children tied in that way.
Very good. I knew that the Kyle family was a very large family, but I didn't realize just how many
spreads
families
everywhere,
that it touched.
You get one family that was early and had a large family, and you have delegation from everywhere.
Generation by generation.
Generation by generation.
Very
Spreads
good.
and spreads. My own great-grandfather, when I did, and of course he settled over here on the west side of the county, but I traced over 800 from him.
Good.
Named them in my book on him. And he came here with a family of 10. And when it comes on down from that family, you see, it populates a big area.
It certainly does. Ms.